203, I'm going to read the next chapter in Matilda. Throwing the Hammer is the name of the chapter. The nice thing about Matilda was that if you had met her casually and talked to her, you would have thought she was a perfectly normal 5.5-year-old child. She displayed almost no outward signs of her brilliance. She never showed off. This is a very sensible and quiet little girl, you would have said to yourself. And unless for some reason you had started a discussion with her about literature or mathematics, you would never have known the extent of her brain power. It was therefore easy for Matilda to make friends with other children. All of those in her class liked her. They knew, of course, that she was clever because they had heard her being questioned by Miss Honey on the first day of term. And they also knew she was allowed to sit quietly with a book during their lessons and not pay any attention. But children of their age did not search deeply for reasons. They were far too wrapped up in their own small struggles to worry overmuch about what others are doing and why. Among Matilda's newfound friends was a girl called Lavender. Right from the first day of term, the two of them started wandering around together during the morning break and in the lunch hour. Lavender was exceptionally small for her age. A skinny little nymph with deep brown eyes and dark hair that was cut and fringed across her forehead. Matilda liked her because she was gutsy and adventurous. She liked Matilda for exactly the same reasons. Before the first week of term was up, awesome tales about the headmistress, Miss Trunchbull, began to filter through to the newcomers. Matilda and Lavender, standing in a corner of the playground during the morning break on the third day, were approached by a rugged 10-year-old with a boil on her nose, called Hortensia. "New scum, I suppose," Hortensia said to them, looking down from her great height. She was eating from an extra-large bag of potato crisps and digging the stuff out in the handfuls. "Welcome to the Bordersals," she added, spraying bits of crisp out of her mouth like snowflakes. The two tiny ones, confronted by this giant, kept a watchful silence. "Have you met Trunchbull yet?" Hortensia asked. "We've seen her during prayer time," Lavender said, "but we haven't met her." "You've got a treat coming to you," Hortensia said. "She hates very small children. She therefore loathes the bottom class and everyone that's in it. She thinks 5-year-olds are grubs that haven't yet hatched out." And she went on with a fistful of crisps, and when she spoke again, sprayed out crumbs. "If you survive your first year, you may just manage to live through the rest of your time here. But many," and here's Hortensia talking to the Lavender and Matilda, "many don't survive. They get carried out on stretchers screaming. I've seen it often." Hortensia paused to observe the effect that these remarks were having on her two twitchy ones. Not very much. They seemed pretty cool. So the large one decided to regale them with further information. "I suppose you know that Trunchbull has a locked-up cupboard in her private quarters called the Chokery. Have you heard about it?" "The Chokey?" Matilda and Lavender shook their heads and continued to gaze up at the giant. Being very small, they were inclined to mistrust any creature that was larger than they were, especially senior girls. "The Chokey," Hortensia went on, "is a very tall but very narrow cupboard. The floor is only 10 inches square, so you can't sit down or squat in it. You have to stand. And 3 of the walls are made of cement with bits of broken glass sticking out of them, so you can't lean against it. And you have to stand more or less at attention the whole time when you get locked up in there. It's terrible." "Can't you lean against the door?" Matilda asked. "Don't be daft," Hortensia said. "The door's got thousands of sharpie, spiky nails sticking out of it. They probably hammered through from the outside, probably by the Trunchbull herself." "Have you been in there?" Lavender asked. "My first term I was in there 6 times, Hortensia said. "Twice for a whole day, the other times for 2 hours each. But 2 hours is quite bad enough. It's pitch dark and you have to stand up dead straight. And if you wobble at all, you get spiked either by glass on the walls or the nails on the door." "Why were you put in there?" Matilda asked. "What had you done?" "The first time I poured half a bit of golden syrup on the seat of the chair Trunchbull was going to sit in during prayers. It was wonderful. When she lowered herself into the chair, there was a loud squelching noise similar to that made by a hippopotamus when lowering his foot into mud on the banks of the Limpopo River. But you're too small and stupid to have read the Just So stories, aren't you? Well, I've read them, Matilda said. Another picture. Hortensia. Spraying bits of chips. You're a liar, Hortensia said amiably. Oh, you haven't read that yet, but no matter. So when the Trunchbull sat down on the golden syrup, the squelch was beautiful. And when she jumped up again, the chair sort of stuck at the seat of those awful green breeches she wears and came up with her for a few seconds until the thick syrup slowly came unstuck. And then she clasped her hands to the seat of her breeches. Both hands got covered in muck, and you would have heard her bellow. But how did you know it was you? How did she know it was you? Lavender asked. A little squirt called Ollie Bog Whistle sneaked on me, Hortensia said. I knocked his front tooth out. And the Trunchbull put me in the chokey for the whole day, Matilda said, gulping. All day long. I was off my rocker when she let me out. I was babbling like an idiot. What were the other things you did to put you in the chokey? Lavender asked. Oh, I can't remember them all now, Hortensia said. She spoke with the air of an old warrior who had been in so many battles that the bravery had become commonplace. It's all so long ago. Ah, yes, I remember one. Here's what happened. I chose the time when I knew Trunchbull was out of the way teaching the sixth formers, and I put up my hand and asked to go to the bogs. But instead of going there, I snuck into Trunchbull's room, and after a speedy search, I found the drawer where she kept all her gym knickers. Go on. Matilda was spellbound. What happened next? I had sent away by post, you see, for this very powerful itching powder, Hortensia said. It cost 50 up a pack and was called the Skin Scorcher. The label said it was made from powdered teeth of deadly snakes, and it was guaranteed to raise welts the size of walnuts on your skin. So I sprinkled the stuff in every pair of knickers in the drawer and then folded them up again carefully. Hortensia paused to cram more crisps into her mouth. Did it work? Lavender asked. Well, Hortensia said. A few days later, during prayers, Trunchbull suddenly started scratching herself like mad down below. Aha, I said to myself. Here we go. She changed for gym already. It's pretty wonderful to be sitting there watching it all, knowing that I was the only person in the whole school who realized exactly what was going on inside of Trunchbull's pants. And I felt safe too. I knew I couldn't be caught. And then the scratching got worse. She couldn't stop. She must have thought she had a wasp's nest down there. And then, right in the middle of the Lord's Prayer, she leapt up and grabbed her bottom and rushed out of the room. Both Matilda and Lavender were enthralled. It was quite clear to them that they were at this moment standing in the presence of a master. Here was somebody who had brought the art of skullduggery right into the highest points of perfection. Someone, moreover, who was willing to risk the life and limb in pursuit of her calling. They gazed in wonder at this goddess, and suddenly even the boil on her nose was no longer a blemish, but a badge of courage. But how did she catch you at that time? She didn't. But I got a day in the chokey just the same. Why? They both asked. The Trunchbull has a nasty habit of guessing. When she doesn't know who the culprit is, she makes a guess at it, and the whole trouble thing is, she's often right. I was the prime suspect this time because of the golden syrup job, and although I knew she didn't have any proof, nothing I said made any difference. I kept shouting, how could I have done it, Miss Trunchbull? I don't even know you kept any spare knickers at school. I didn't even know the itching powder. I don't have any. I've never heard of it. But the line didn't help me, in spite of the great performance I put on. Trunchbull simply grabbed me by one ear and rushed me to the chokey at the double and threw me inside and locked the door. That was my second all-day stretch. It was absolute torture. I was spiked and cut when I came out. It's like going to war, Matilda said, overawed. You're damn right. It's like war, and the casualties are terrific. We are the Crusaders, the gallant army, fighting for our lives with hardly any weapons at all, and the Trunchbull is a prince of darkness, the foul serpent, the fiery dragon, with all the weapons at her command. It's a tough life. We all try to support each other. You can rely on us, Lavender said, making her height of 3 feet 2 inches stretch as tall as possible. No, I can't, Hortensia said. You're only shrimps, but you never know. You may find a use for you one day in some undercover job. Tell me just a little bit more about what she does. Please do. I mustn't frighten you before you've been here only a week, Hortensia said. You won't, Lavender said. We may be small, but we're quite tough. Listen to this, Hortensia said. Only yesterday, Trunchbull caught a boy called Julius Rotwinkle eating licorice. And you know what? During scripture lessons, and she simply picked him up by one arm, flung him clear out of the open classroom window. Our classroom is one floor up, and we saw Julius Rotwinkle go sailing over the garden like a frisbee and land with a thump in the middle of lettuce. And then Trunchbull turned to us and said, from now on, anybody else caught eating in class goes straight out the window. Did Julius Rotwinkle break a bone? Lavender asked. Only a few, Hortensia said. You've got to remember, Trunchbull once threw the hammer for the Britain in the Olympics, so she's very proud of her right arm. What's throwing the hammer? Lavender asked. The hammer, Hortensia said, it's actually a ruddy gray cannonball at the end of a long bit of wire, and the thrower whisks it around and around for her head faster and faster, and then lets go. You might have to be terrifically strong, and the Trunchbull will throw anything around just to keep her arm in, especially children. Good heavens, Lavender said. I once heard her say, Hortensia said, that a large boy is about the same weight as an Olympic, and here's Julius being thrown out the window. It's about the same weight as the hammer, and therefore it was very useful for practicing with. At that point, something strange happened. The playground, which up until then had been filled with shrieks and shouting of children and play all about, became as silent as a grave. Watch out, Hortensia whispered. Matilda and Lavender glanced around and saw a gigantic figure, Miss Trunchbull, advancing through the crowd of boys and girls with menacing strides. The children drew back hastily to let her through, and her progress across the asphalt was like that of Moses parting the Red Sea. A formidable figure she was in her belted smock and green breeches. Below the knees, her calf muscles stood out like grapefruits inside her stockings. Amanda Thripp, she was shouting. You, Amanda Thripp, come here. Hold your hats, Hortensia whispered. What's going to happen? Lavender whispered. The idiot Amanda. She let her hair grow even longer during the hauls, and her mother had plaited it into pigtails. Silly thing to do. Why silly? Matilda asked. If there's one thing Trunchbull can't stand, it's pigtails. Matilda and Lavender saw the giant in green breeches advancing upon a girl about 10 with a pair of plaited golden pigtails hanging over her shoulders. Each pigtail had a blue satin bow. It looked very pretty. The girl was wearing pigtails, Amanda Thripp. She stood quite still, watching the advancing giant, and the expression on her face was one that might be found on the face of a person trapped in a small... There's Amanda Thripp with her pigtails. They must be braided. Trapped in a small field with an enraged bull, which is charging flat out towards her. The girl was glued on the spot, terror-struck, pop-eyed, quivering, knowing for certain that the day of judgment had come to her at last. Miss Trunchbull had now reached the victim, stood towering over her. I want those filthy pigtails off before you come back to school tomorrow. Chop them off, throw them in the dustbin. You understand? Amanda, paralyzed with fear, managed to stutter. But my mommy likes them. She plates them for me every morning. Your mummy's a twit, the Trunchbull bellowed. She pointed a finger at the size of a salami at the child's head and shouted, You look like a rat with tail coming out of its head. But my mommy thinks I look lovely, Mrs. Trunchbull. Amanda stuttered, shaking like a leaf. I don't give a tinker's toot what your mummy thinks, Trunchbull yelled, and with that she lunged forward, grabbed a hold of Amanda's pigtails in her right fist and lifted the girl clean off the ground, and she started swinging her around and around her head, faster and faster, and Amanda was screaming blue murder. And Trunchbull was yelling, I'll give you your pigtails, you little rat. Shades of the Olympics, Hortensia murmured. She's getting up to speed now, just like she does. 10 to 1, she's going to throw her. The hammer's coming. And now the Trunchbull was leaning back against the weight of the whirling girl and pivoted expertly on her toes, spinning round and round, and soon Amanda Thripp was traveling so fast she became a blur. And suddenly, with a mighty grunt, the Trunchbull let go of the pigtails, and Amanda went sailing like a rocket right over the wire fence of the playground and high in the sky. That's just child abuse right there. Last page. Well thrown, sir, someone shouted from across the playground. Matilda, who was mesmerized by the whole crazy affair, saw Amanda Thripp descended in a long, graceful parabola on the playing field beyond. She landed on the grass, bounced 3 times, and finally came to a rest. And then, amazingly, she sat up. She looked a trifle dazed. Who could blame her? But after a minute or so, she was on her feet again, tottered back towards the playground. The Trunchbull stood on the playground, dusting off her hands. Not too bad, she said. Not bad at all, considering I'm not in strict training. Not bad at all. And then she strode away. She's mad, Hortensia said. But don't her parents complain? That's what I was thinking, Matilda asked. Would yours? Hortensia asked. I know mine wouldn't. She treats the mothers and fathers like the same as the children. They're all scared to death of her. I'll be seeing you sometime, you know, the 2 of you. And with that, she sauntered away. There's Amanda Thripp. Her braids don't look quite the same. All right. See you later. Have a great weekend.